Purpose is an essential element of you. It is the reason you are on the planet at this particular time in history. Your very existence is wrapped up in the things you are here to fulfill. Whatever you choose for a career path, remember the struggles along the way are only meant to shape you for your purpose.
I'm Garrett McQueen.
I'm Scott Blankenship.
And this is TRILLOQUY. There are a lot of podcasts out there co-hosted by two black people. This is not one of them. Shout out to Tom, who wrote an email saying that sensitive blacks like you, Scott, people might not be able to handle 12 Years a Slave. Have you seen that movie, by the way, 12 Years a Slave?
I'm sorry, I haven't.
Yeah, and you might not be able to handle it. So he got your race wrong, but he got your feelings right.
I'm a sensitive black man, evidently.
Yeah, shout out. And then I also wanted to quickly shout out Molly. You know, I really love these messages. Thank you so much. But I like to have a laugh. She said in the email that, she realized while listening to some of the early opuses of TRILLOQUY, it was the first time she really heard two black people talking to one another. So my first reaction was like, wow, TRILLOQUY is so impactful. Look at this. My second thought was, but you've never just turned over to BET just for curiosity's sake or nothing?
I really have to think that she was being hyperbolic. Yeah. I really, maybe at length. Maybe at length,
and maybe on those topics, or
and that was my first reaction was, how long do we wait before we tell her I'm white? But how long do we ride that out?
Oh, I thought she was talking about me and one of the guests. Either way, I think it's funny. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it. You got some announcements here before we get into movement one?
Yes, my main announcement is white people. You should start capitalizing the B in black when you are writing about people who are black.
Straight out of the gate. Scott is giving it up.
No, I got you brought it up in that series of tweets. And, and I could have come back and said, I'm not trusting Siri with nothing no more or anything like that, but why force another error? So I just wanted to let you know that is something for me that is taking a couple extra tries to get used to doing it. So, but white people and other folks, when you're writing the word black, just type the capital B.
Now, what about the W? Does it get a capital W?
I knew that you. I haven't seen one. Who does that? Who have you seen do that?
No, I'm just asking. I don't know if I've seen it. I think it would be a little aggressive looking.
Doesn't it?
And we're not even in movement one yet.
Boy, you guys strap in and just try to go limp
but it's good to have these laughs. Chadwick Boseman gave us the downbeat for this opus. Shocked the world with the news of his passing. So of course we'll be talking a little bit about Chadwick Boseman today. A really special guest today, T. Sierra from Atlanta. They are actually on their way to Minnesota to start the next chapter of their educational studies, urban studies, a doctorate in urban studies. We talk about, what a city is, capitalism, their beginnings in music, how they apply certain musical concepts to the liberation of people, in a new world. A really great conversation, and then a few things to get into in the TRILLOQUY. We have spent a long time here in these. This is like one of those concerts you go to where they walk out and say, "Thank y'all for coming. I'd like to thank the Booster Club," for, and you do all this for 20 minutes before the whole concert. Anyway, sorry about it, but here we go, checking our accidentals. Scott, I feel like I want to put a sharp next to the life and legacy of Chadwick Boseman. I know the news is, really rough, and warm thoughts to, his family and friends. But, thinking about who he was as a person and what he, accomplished and what he inspired is incredible. So I'm putting a sharp there. this week. Black Panther. Let's just jump right in. So I'm not really and never was a Marvel person. So, all of these movies that people went crazy over, it just wasn't, something that caught my attention. No shade or nothing to it. But this movie comes out called Black Panther. I'm hearing about it and people are excited. So that caught my attention. So like so many others, went out, got a really cool dashiki to wear on opening night. It was actually after a concert I was playing down in Knoxville, so I changed out of my very European tails and bow tie and all that stuff into this very Afrocentric, thing to walk down the street and see this movie. King T'Challa helped us imagine, and when I say us, I mean Black people, imagine a very Black-centered, Afrocentric place where we could be. And I'm really sorry and ashamed to say that I wasn't familiar with Chadwick Boseman or much of his work before Black Panther. But goodness gracious, did he help start a movement? I mean, what was your Black Panther experience?
Well, I was one of those kids that was spending my time reading comic books and graphic novels.
So you knew it from back in the day.
Not only reading them, but I was very carefully turning the pages so that I wouldn't crease it.
Sure.
And then I had a bag in cardboard that I put it in, and then I had a trunk.
Oh, you were that kid.
Yeah. I was a collector. I was fanatical about it. And I had maybe somewhere between half a dozen and a dozen Black Panther episodes, but I never followed it.
The comic books.
Did I say episodes? Yeah, I meant comic books, right. But I wasn't buying it on the series, because there was a storyline that I didn't jump in on. And frankly, I was looking for comic books that were more what the Avengers were doing. Things like that, those teams. Wolverine was my main man.
But I wonder, for you as a kid with Black Panther as one of these comic book characters, I wouldn't even have known about that. Did that not seem different to you or a different flavor on things? Or was it just, that's Black Panther?
It did. And I didn't identify with it, obviously, So
it was actively the Black character,
Well, there was a history that I wasn't hip to yet. And also, come on, I went to public school in the Midwest,
Okay,
so
yeah.
we're not going to get too deep into African history, and I wasn't even certain how to say his name.
So fast forward to the Black Panther movie. Well, I guess I should ask. Were you are you a Marvel person? Did you go out and see all of these different Marvel movies?
100%.
Okay, so
100%.
So I wonder for you, how do you think? How was going to see Black Panther a different experience, or was it a similar experience to go in to see Superman? Or I'm sorry, I don't know the other Marvel movies.
That's DC, but
Okay.
that's cool. No, it was probably the largest event in the canon so far, without
Okay.
question. And
Yeah.
the reason being is because it was speaking out to an entire section of our country that just had not been spoken to and represented, and did it in such a way that we see it where people are doing these tributes to the Black Panther. But you see, it goes deeper than that. There was an article that I read where this reviewer said that Chadwick as an actor develops his character from the inside out and the outside in. Now, what this means is not only do you understand your character's drive and their history, but you're listening to those around you, and you're taking that and using that to communicate, right? So what happens when an actor does that well, you care about the character.
Yeah.
And so not you said you've never seen a Marvel movie, right?
Right, not in a theater. It was never an event for me to go see a Marvel film, right?
But to imagine what would have happened if they half-assed that and didn't do the diligence that they did.
I mean, we would have towed them up. You know how the kids are,
See?
as they say.
So it promised and delivered, and maybe even over-delivered. And that moment when everybody starts screaming in Avengers, you know, when he shows up, he's the first to show up through Doctor Strange's little portals, you know?
Okay. This is in later movies.
Yeah, and it gives me chills to think about. But also look at his other work, you know, Get On Up. You know, the dance moves for James Brown, he did those. I really believed the trajectory that his career was taking was setting him up for something like what Jamie Foxx has been experiencing, just sort of a jack of all trades, you know, and mastering all of them.
What is there to be said about Chadwick Boseman, you know, in all of these legendary roles, his playing legendary black people? So, you know, there was James Brown. I also understand there was Jackie Robinson. You know, we've already talked about King T'Challa. Mm-hmm. You know, that seems like a pattern to me. You know, what people, you know, what these casting directors, whatever, saw in Chadwick Boseman, this young, this fresh, but yet somehow old and wise spirit, all matched into one. You know, it's I don't know. He was incredible. He was incredible.
It was alchemy. Whatever talent he had was alchemy.
He was a cheat code.
You know, he had to have been. He had to have been. The talent lost there. And you know, I called you and Dell. I texted you and Dell right when I found out. I was probably first on the scene. I was on the air. It couldn't have been posted for 10 minutes when I shared it over the air.
And then, you know, we always get on here talking about our problems and it's stressful and X, Y, and Z. He's doing all these movies and all this stuff while keeping, you know, colon cancer from the world.
I can't imagine.
Know? And we talk about how hard our jobs are, you know.
He was doing it though, and with such perfection.
Okay, so we do actually have some orchestral news to talk about in these accidentals, but I'm going to throw another sharp out for my podcast hero, Joe Budden. Mm-hmm. So last week, it's been, you know, all over pop culture news how they announced why they have decided not to continue their exclusive contract with Spotify. And, you know, if you know the podcast, you know, you can get into, you know, all of the backstories and all of the, you know, funny moments and serious moments connected to that. But the reason why I think it's important to note why I'm bringing it up here is Joe Budden really talking about and protecting and going to bat for podcasts as a genre, you know, talking about how he was, you know, offered for a continuation of the contract that they're under now. That's going to be over on September 23rd, I think the date is. When he talked about why he didn't take that large sum of money, he's talking about how impactful his podcast is, as you know, Spotify's, you know, top, you know, revenue creators, you know, the biggest audiences and you know, all that sort of thing. How if they offer him, you know, one amount of money, what hope is there for the smaller guys, you know, the smaller podcasts who are also trying to, you know, take their things and monetize it. Mm-hmm. You know, he has one of those projects where twice a week he gets, you know, 2.5-3 million people to sit down and listen to a 3-hour long podcast. You know,
what do you think his days are like in between?
I mean, I think he works hard and plays hard, and you know, he'll talk about the ladies he meets, or sometimes just hanging out in his home alone and being depressed about whatever he's thinking about. And you know, I'm sure it's busy.
But like when you're not recording TRILLOQUY, there's things that you do each day to get things lined up.
Oh yeah.
Or is he shooting from the hip every time he goes in?
I mean, no. Of course, there's planning and just know paying attention to the culture, paying attention to what's going on.
That's
in
enough.
The world. That's
enough.
a job.
Yeah.
You know, keeping up with with all that. So, Scott, I kind of wanted your feedback on, again, protecting the art of the podcast. One of his big points is that, it has to be respected how this is a unique form. It's not the same even as what we do when we're on the radio hosting classical music.
Mm-hmm.
In all of your years of broadcast, do you think podcasting is a unique corner of this content creation broadcast world that requires, different sets of skills that are, unique to what this is?
Man, there's TV shows where they give British people awards for making cakes. I mean, there's a show for everything, right? Like, and I think that podcasting is going to be that for audio, and it's already moved past the spot where I'm going to be of any sort of help or influence at all.
What do you mean?
A shout out to Steve Bergeron, one of my oldest friends from back home in Omaha. Him and I have been talking recently, and he has a son that's about 25, I think. And they're doing a podcast called the Game Tea podcast. Okay, so they have one that's an expert on all these different formats. There's 3 of them. And they've got a great following for being, only maybe 30 episodes in, and I don't know what the hell they're talking about. So what I'm saying is this medium has already moved past the part where I'm able to understand.
And and also what networks or whatever are able to offer. There can never be on TV, the niche things.
Correct.
That exist.
So we
on
have
the
Quibi,
podcast
right?
front.
Isn't that the new video thing? Like a
is it?
like a TikTok sort of? I don't know.
Sure.
I saw it was somebody going to a drag show. How far away is it? It's long enough for a Quibi, and so he pulls out his phone and watches a Quibi.
But what about Quibi?
Well, I'm saying that these short form mediums, are sort of like YouTube. You just take or TikTok. You take a video and upload it. You could use a podcast to do a radio drama. It's whatever you want it to be.
It's dynamic.
It can be
dynamic.
It can be the vehicle for whatever your show is. And so I think Quibi is that on the video side. Sort of like a graduation from TikTok, maybe. I don't know much about it. If you know, write us a note and say something.
I know nothing about Quibi. I don't know why you brought it up.
Well, I just think that media is changing to the point of access where there's just going to be so many choices, hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of ways to get it.
So with all of these, this infinite number of choices, again, back to, the Joe Budden podcast, if you're able to get all of these people twice a week, and, when we talk about engagement, they can measure how long people listen, we're all there for all 3 hours, twice a week, over 2 million people, these are, network TV numbers. These are, box office numbers every single week. So, I think we're really seeing the dawn, with him giving up, and I'll post the article to the website description, all of that. I think with, him saying no to the exorbitant amount of money that they offered him for exclusivity and ownership, them owning that content, for him to, say no to that, I think, sets the precedent that this is something that, really should be respected and has already proven to be very impactful and really sustainable when you think about it. All the people across the field doing all of their different podcasts, it's not about, camera crews and makeup and, it's about if you can get the, bare bones equipment you need. And
you too can have a podcast.
Do it. Right. So, I encourage people, I'll post that episode number. I think there are 2 episodes, and if you want to scroll through and listen, I just think it's really important to understand what one of the top guys out here doing podcasts says about the importance of owning your own project, and valuing yourself more than folks from the outside value you, especially if you think that they don't understand specifically what it is you're trying to do, or if more importantly, as Joe Budden points out, if these large organizations, these companies don't understand the audience that you're speaking to, if they're just using you as a way to siphon their money to them, you know.
So why is there surprise that Spotify was like only out to get the clicks? I mean, they're not taking care. What was the byline on that?
I don't think that was, well, the byline off, I accidentally clicked something. The byline is simply Joe Budden is taking his podcast off Spotify because the company is pillaging his audience.
Right.
Yeah. So, using
But we knew that.
Right. And, what he points out is that, he's getting out of the contract. He got it in the beginning for analytics, to have full access to all numbers. Okay. And as you can speak to, that has not always been the case for TRILLOQUY, and, there are reasons for that. And it's sort of, the norm across the industry. He worked it out in this contract that he could get those numbers. He got the information he needs, and he's moving away. That was more important than the money. So I think it's just a really interesting thing.
So if he takes his podcast and starts producing it through, say, his own portal, what do you think the going rate would be to hear it? Would you pay $10 a month just to hear Joe Budden?
Yeah, I think that's the conversation people have been having. Me personally, I think, if he charged something like, $10 a month, that's plenty for them because he has that many listeners, and I think I would pay that. It's a it's a good. It's content that I appreciate, and that's a part of my routine. So yeah, I would.
And if he says, that.
And why? Let me just quickly, go
ahead because I'm trying to formulate.
What I'm saying, so why? Because I pay, we pay $10 for Netflix or HBO. Why not? I pay, spend that same amount of money supporting somebody black, something that centers,
right.
us.
Okay, and it's going right into his pocket, not Spotify's. This is what I'm trying to get at. So then, would that mean that he would actually have more to say, start producing other podcasts or other video projects or creating the Joe Budden group, with all sorts of media underneath this umbrella?
I'm sure. I mean, he's already managed to, put together a pretty hefty team for just a podcast, who are all getting paid and taken care of. So, that's something that he values. And yeah, I think it's a cool story. It's something how podcasts are a thing. Who knew? Did you know? A decade ago that podcasts would be what they are today. Maybe you'd heard of them, but
I would have thought you were nuts.
Yeah,
freedom is important.
Absolutely.
And the offer that has been presented, and let me make myself clear, there has been an offer presented of money that I have never seen in my lifetime. Money that you gentlemen have never seen in your lifetime. Still not enough to make you sleep right at night with what was being asked for.
You saw that article in the Baltimore Sun a few days ago, right?
Yep.
Nothing short of miraculous. BSO and musicians signed contract guaranteeing performances through 2025.
So before we jump into this, when we were coming home from Sphinx in February, I remember you said you actually shared an Uber with the president of the Baltimore Symphony, right?
Right. He is, for some reason, his ride was going to be like an hour and it was going to be $80 or something. So yeah, Peter was his name.
And you said he, knows TRILLOQUY, right?
Mm-hmm. He took my card. Did
it seem shady?
He seemed very enthused.
Because remember, back when Jennifer Arnold was on TRILLOQUY, we talked about how the Baltimore Symphony was, in some financial trouble back in the before time, and we talked about, well, you aren't engaging your community. How is your organization relevant to these folks who live here? And no wonder, and X, Y, and Z. But here we are. It looks like even through COVID, they figured out a way to bounce back.
Mm-hmm. Well, don't you think that perhaps some of these organizations are actually listening to TRILLOQUY and taking note?
They could be. Yeah, I don't want to take credit, but what? So I'll just tell you honestly. When I read this headline, I thought to myself, So I wonder if anything is going to be different. My first question was about what they're delivering in this guaranteed, when so many other orchestras are failing and not going to make it, are they going to take advantage of, trying to get to, the audience that is in their community, the critique we have for them before, that I have for them before, or is it going to be some more of the Mozart and the Beethoven?
Right. It's hard to see how they wouldn't default back to what they know.
Yeah. Well, there are some pay cuts here, but
right. Sizable ones. It looks like the base salary is going to go down to just under $70,000. It looks like 20 some odd % cut. And
now let's step back just from that. During COVID, that is still a nice salary, isn't it?
Hell yeah.
It's I really maybe there's some
that's probably $800 a week, right?
I'm scrolling here and I'm just trying to find something concerning what they'll be bringing in these guaranteed seasons. Even more so than how it's being delivered. You are, all these folks have the opportunity to continue this thing, this orchestral music. Goodness gracious, are they going to do something for the folks who are struggling, for the folks who, are really just trying to stay above water through all this, while y'all are, outside of Orchestra Hall here playing a Bach, a trumpet fanfare?
Well, let's be specific. It was Carl Philipp Emanuel.
Oh, excuse
Bach.
me, one of the sons. Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, we're really separating Bachs and Pepper here.
I'm not trying to be a hater, but I mean, do you kind of understand the energy I'm putting forward? Like, there are so many of these groups that are not going to make it, and this orchestra is saying that they're guaranteeing performances through 2025. I really hope they understand the responsibility they have, especially in a city like Baltimore.
And I will reiterate my challenge: the first orchestra to announce an all-black season wins. I love that expression.
Let me wait.
On
I'll
your
wait
face.
till the TRILLOQUY.
I really wish that we were doing this on video because that expression just
I'll wait till the TRILLOQUY.
Warms my heart.
So if you want to read more about what the Baltimore Symphony is so excited about, I'll put that in the description.
Big cuts in the administrative section as well.
There's that too. The Knoxville Symphony Orchestra musicians file grievance following furlough announcement. So, again, all of these orchestras out here guaranteeing more seasons of, what we've seen. You're going to sprinkle in some black music just to appease people like me. And folks who had a decent season actually planned out are not making it, okay? So this is coming from WATE News out of Knoxville. I'll post the article here, but what I have been seeing on social media from my former colleagues is that days before their season was supposed to start, this furlough season was jumped on them, and that short of notice actually breaks their contract. So, So not only, are they out of concerts and out of work, but, dealing with musicians versus management and the board. And as someone who sits on the board for an orchestra, I am, I understand what the musicians are going through. I played with that orchestra. Those are my former colleagues. But I don't know what to say because I wonder what these orchestras could be doing other than figuring out how to have concerts. I've really been diving into that area of what if instead of taking this money that we've managed to scrounge together, instead of paying for, the hall and these rehearsals and X, Y, and Z, put the musicians in the community doing this, maybe even without the instruments, maybe, the such and such symphony brass section goes and cleans up this city block. And, maybe the orchestra can't pay them for the whole week of services, but, if they can make that count for 2 services, and what positive look will that have on the community? So, why am I talking about this in conjunction with the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra? I want them to, get paid and get their money and do what they love. it's getting hard, as we continue through COVID and get closer to this election season, and who knows what's going to happen after November. What are we fighting for, really? I want to fight for the livelihoods. I don't want that to get tangled in with my fighting for Beethoven. And again, as I said before, that's considering the fact that the Knoxville Symphony actually had a pretty diverse, a pretty colorful season planned anyway. So they're an exception in that regard. So yeah, it's hard. It's a really I'm challenged. And of course, if I were still down there, I'd be trying to figure things out myself. So
I've been lucky enough to not be laid off or furloughed so far. And so help me out. If you get furloughed, do any benefits associated with the job go away too?
Yeah, I've never been furloughed either. I understand what it means is that you're just, what it means is that we're no longer paying you, but when we can pay you again, here we go. So it's not like you're laid off to where you don't have your job anymore.
Right.
It's just that your job is paused.
Got it. So I wonder what happens to any benefits.
I'm going to see if I can't go back on the internet and put side by side what the Baltimore Symphony had planned for 2020, 2021 before COVID, and what the Knoxville Symphony had planned, just to see.
Okay.
And I guess when I find those, I'll post something about that in the description of this. Shout out to everyone down in Knoxville. I feel like I kind of went on a weird tangent there. I guess to wrap my point up in a nutshell, I want all musicians, including my former colleagues down in Knoxville, Baltimore, everywhere else. I want everyone to be working. If cuts are having to be made, if we're having to make if you can't be in the concert hall like you used to anyway with the full orchestra because of COVID, if you're making all of these accommodations, why not transform what the organization can also be, which is something that really serves the community? So, that's all I'm saying. Sometimes I get tied between what I'm fighting for and what is
and the fight.
And the fight, right. So, to get us into I'm always forgetting to give my accidentals. So I guess the Knoxville Symphony story, I'm gonna give it a natural because I think there's opportunity here. I hope that somebody listening to this can think about what it might look like for Knoxville Symphony musicians to clean up Gay Street or play some music out on town. It's not Town Square, but Market Square, out on Market Square, or whatever. We'll see. The first time I was on national air, when I guest hosted Performance Today, I insisted that one of the Knoxville Symphony recordings make it through that program. So what ended up coming through was a performance of the Knoxville Symphony, our rendition of Jeff Midkiff's Mandolin Concerto. Really unique, really Appalachian, really culturally relevant, piece of music for that part of the country. So here's a little bit of this as we get into movement 2.
Garrett, we seem to have gotten into a pattern recently of sort of doing a little mental, emotional check-in with one another around this spot. Mm-hmm. How you feeling with the COVIDs, with the everythings?
I am on the brighter side right now for sure. Who, goodness gracious. Last week I had some really, really rough days. I'll get into that in the TRILLOQUY, but yeah, it's better now. It's always great to, come in here and lay it out for the people, get some of this energy out. How about you?
I've been struggling again, man. I'm just and I always think about things to say in the podcast when I'm experiencing them, and then I get here and sit down in front of a microphone and it all jams up.
Notebook.
And I think that
Notebook.
I think that this is part of it. Even my short-term memory's kind of been affected lately.
Sure.
And sleep is all erratic. And so I found some music that sort of fed that. And you said that you know Vijay Iyer and Brooklyn Writers project. You've heard some of.
Well, not the project, but Vijay Iyer, the composer, the musician, the creator, and also Brooklyn Writer, of course, the string quartet. But I don't know anything about this collaboration.
Well, their piece called "Dig the Say" came across my
Dig the Say.
Dig the Say came across my randomized new classical playlist.
Dig the S-A-Y?
Dig the S-A-Y,
Okay.
Dig the Say. I'm not sure what it means, and I'm fine with that right now because the music itself, it feels neo-classical and neo-romantic in different spots, like they're imitating those eras, but then there's also this agitation about it. And I really like to hear musicians who can play the instrument in ways you're not used to hearing it. So there's plucks up on the headpiece and making sounds that aren't traditionally thought of as acceptable coming from a string quartet.
So a dissonance.
There is a dissonance about it. But at the same time, it also was kind of feeding that need. I've been telling you, I've been feeling anxious. Like I want to be on the road. I want to find an adventure. I feel like I've got all this steam built up that is not having the sort of release that I'm used to having in a summer, of going on a road trip or seeing a show. And so there were parts of the piece that spoke to me in that way. So if you want something that kind of sounds like you feel, check out Dig the Say, Vijay Iyer, and Brooklyn Writer.
Well, you talk about wanting an adventure, having all of this energy plugged up. I already told you that you're going to put the single tap down here in my basement so that I have beer. I'll let you exert all of the energy. I will be out of the way as you do it.
I am not certain where the adventure comes in, but okay, yeah. I would love to have Blankenbrow on tap in new locations.
Yeah. We'll have to figure out some sort of Black Pride pour.
Okay.
And of course, it will be a pour. In which I manage all parts of it and do none of the physical labor.
Shit.
And that will be the beer. It's going to be delicious. And I can't wait to have it down here in the cooler with the tap that you've delivered. Oh, this is going to be great. Thank you, Scott.
Now I wish we had video to show my face.
Okay. So we're, I think I mentioned today's guest, TC Era. One of the things that they mention and bring up is the trap and trap music. So I wanted to take a quick moment to cover some of that. So for folks who don't know, I thought I would go to Urban Dictionary, our friends at Urban Dictionary. It defines the trap. I'm going to read the first couple sentences here. A ghetto place that if you stay there too long, you get trapped there. The people and circumstances bring you down. You make friends with someone, they ask you for a ride to work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's very anti-black here. Another definition says in Atlanta, it means the place where drugs are sold, like Gucci Mane say in his music and all of that. A lot of these definitions are sort of weird for me, but basically what the trap is, and this is something that comes up in my conversation with T, what the trap is a collaborative black place where, for what it is, there is violence there is the selling of drugs, but there's also the selling of goods and the sharing of resources, to help these people survive, an opportunity that they didn't get by anyone else, right? No different programs or whatever. So that's what it is. And of course, just like out of any culture, out of any community, there is music that comes out of that. And one of the artists that T mentions as sort of a sort of culminating group of musicians who have really done their due diligence in bringing that into the 21st century. This 3-4 decades old art form now is Migos, and of course one of the Migos. Thanks to them, you got to add a little bit of vocabulary to your your own Rolodex. You learn, this little bit of stuff that I wear on my wrist here. How would you describe that now?
That's drip.
So anyway,
Why do you laugh?
Because I think it's cool that you're learning.
That a middle-aged white man can pick up new vernacular.
Do you have any drip at home?
I have a Bulova watch that my brother in Abu Dhabi sent me. So shout out to my brother.
Something from the Middle East. Whoa.
No, it was actually when I moved here. When I moved here, it was in 2006, and him and his wife Karen got me a very nice gift, a nice watch, and on the back it says "Seek Joy."
Oh wow, that's a good affirmation, especially these days. And you can check the time and be seeking joy. Now, how do we? But with time being weird and anyway, let's not jump off the trail. But
yeah, I need something closer. Yeah, being better, taking better track of time would be good for me right now.
Well, I just wanted to quickly, and I don't know if Ric Flair drip counts as a as a trap tune, but I just kind of wanted to quickly go over that because I'm sure there are a couple folks who would have no idea, what T was talking about when it comes to the trap. Please,
have you got a drip tray?
Do I have I do have a drip. A drip box. A drip box. It's in the bedroom.
All right.
Shout out to Migos. Shout out to Offset, and all the folks that are going to be mentioned. Of course, T.I., Gucci, Young Thug. I could go on, but anyway, be sure to stick around for that conversation. But before we got into the third movement, where T is going to take a stand, I wanted to go back quickly to. Black Panther. So as you were watching the movie in the theater, especially for the first time, I'm sure the sounds were sort of ubiquitous of Marvel, of that for you. But did you sense a different flair on it? I mean, did it feel more black, maybe more African than, the Captain America soundtrack, I guess? Is that Marvel? Did I get it right this time?
Yes, very good, yeah. No, to be honest with you, I was really struck by the visuals first.
Yeah, of course,
and how,
of course.
Amazing, all the choreography for the fight scenes, all of this was amazing.
Yeah.
I think that the music fit in so seamlessly. It was just one of those things that how can you single one thing out? To me, it just seemed like it seemed familiar in the black centric nature of it, but you could tell that whoever did the sound design kind of took some of their own liberties.
Yeah, I mean, I was really drawn, by it. And of course, I was down there on the radio in Knoxville at that point. So, of course, after I saw the film, the first thing I was going to do was go put some of the music on the radio. So, I go up and look up who wrote the score. And honestly, yes, of course, I was expecting somebody black, but it was not. It was actually a Swedish composer named Ludwig Göransson, and Ludwig has won awards for the music he's done on Black Panther and other black projects. Also played a huge role in Childish Gambino's "This Is America." So this Swedish music creator, composer, really playing a big role in, black art. And listen, I have been there for his acceptance speeches and listened to a couple interviews. He really seems like he is putting respect on what he's trying to craft and what he's trying to do, in collaboration with black art and black artists. And I was wondering if you had thoughts as far as, if you think there's a conversation there. We always talk about allyship, and when we see Black Panther, we see blackness to the front, and this was a really great opportunity for someone so talented to play an important role without having to take the space of the visual or of the spotlight, or really playing an integral role from the back seat, if you will.
I think it's a good example of the way collaboration should work. And we've talked before about how we're talking about inclusion of Black people in this music, not to the exclusion of white people. And I think that this is a great example of how something good can come from a thoughtful collaboration.
And it's mostly Black, obviously. Black Panther is, this is America, a Black thing. So, one of the critiques of inclusion is, well, that still maintains the power structure, the hierarchy of we're bringing you into this space. People, look, hashtag I'm rooting for everybody Black. Obviously, it's all that there. But I think it's also important to note that it is possible for there to be some positive collaboration, so as we honor, the late Chadwick Boseman and think about, for me, thinking about the impact he made with Black Panther, I can't separate the music from that because it was such a powerful moment for me as well, and a moment for me to affirm Blackness to my then radio audience. One of the first questions I asked T in the interview is, about the implications of a so-called Wakanda, a Black center, and how even, that thing has to be critiqued as we think about what government is these days with what's going on in Washington and X, Y, and Z. So as we get into that conversation, I thought we would transition here with a little of Ludwig Göransson's music from the score to Black Panther.
LOL, it's so interesting that you say that, because a few weeks ago on my Twitter, it was in response to Beyonce's Black is King. And I'm going to be fully transparent. I have yet to watch it because I haven't been in a place to feel like I want to experience that type of, I'm going to air quote it, Black art or Black art trademark with the capital B, capital A, and all of the things. But I quote tweeted the teaser that Beyonce's team had put out for Black is King. And I just said, I'm ready to abolish the Wakanda industrial complex, right? And when I said that, I got a lot of pushback because people took it as either one, I wasn't well read enough on Africa and the African diaspora, which is funny because Black feminist thought and African diaspora studies are both my subfields. So it's not that at all. But they were thinking that I was so underread about Africa or Pan-Africanism that I would just reduce all images of Africa in its glory to something in the genealogy of Wakanda. And that is not what I was trying to do, but also it is what I was trying to highlight, because something like that, Black is King and Wakanda and all of the things, while I think it's revolutionary to see images of the Black imaginary portrayed on screen, it's important to root those fantastic images of Blackness in the idea that actually, no, this is an alternate reality. Like, this could be happening now if the histories of colonialism and anti-Black violence didn't exist, right? And so as I see people digging back into the things about Black Panther and Wakanda that made those moments so special, especially in centering Chadwick, I'm okay with the folks who engage it as for what it was, right? An amazing moment, probably the biggest moment in Black art and Black culture that we've experienced in our contemporary sort of generations. The possibility and the imagination that it has given Black youth is obviously something that we can't get away from and we can't take away from people. But also, it often comes with the idea that those images are only possible if we work hard enough, if we amass enough wealth, if we somehow find intergenerational wealth that Black folks across the diaspora think we don't have. It's this notion that even in being shown through Wakanda or through a Black is King, right? That Blackness is plural, Blackness is beautiful, Blackness has the possibility to do these things. We still think that the only way that we have access to that is through some extraordinary means of acquiring and accumulating capital. And that's where I sort of draw the line. I saw that come up just when thinking back on Wakanda, but then also thinking about Chadwick himself. And I saw a tweet where somebody was like, he did 7 movies in 4 years while fighting cancer. What's holding you back from doing? And I'm like, huh? Like
a lot of other things.
this it's ableist, right? It's anti-Black, right? But then it's also, I would love to see us take up images of the Black imaginary and the Black possible without it always being reduced to Blackness as is not enough, is not working hard enough. When in reality, we have to unlearn and decolonize the way that we think and move in this world to be able to see the wealth and abundance that we already have and how that can be deployed into making our present reality as revolutionary as what we imagine a Wakanda or Black is King sort of world to be.
Yeah, you use phrases like cultivating wealth and building capital. I know from, following your work that, you really define a city as being rooted in that. The purpose of a city is capital, maybe why we even use the word capital as it applies to cities. Is the idea of a Black city problematic from your perspective in that regard? We talk about how Black capitalism isn't going to save us either, after all, right?
Yeah. No, it absolutely is. I get online all the time and say, abolish the mayor, abolish the city council, abolish the idea that you need an individual leader, abolish the idea that you need to be a part of some corporate elite to matter, because those are the things that in cities like give you this moniker of value, in the same way that a neighborhood, right, being associated as slum or ghetto, has no value beyond its possibility, which is why they're often seen as nowhere now and able to be contaminated or completely destroyed. And then something new is able to be put there. And then what's new has to be what's thriving, right?
Yeah.
It's the inherent anti-Blackness of capitalism on top that spatializes Blackness in a city in a certain way based off of value or non-value that I think we have to pay attention to. And that even if a city ascends to the place of being what we call a chocolate city or a Black city, where the population is predominantly Black, where maybe the biggest leaders are Black, and in the case of a place like Atlanta, even your cultural and business elite are largely Black, right?
Right.
Now, they don't have near the same amount of capital, wealth, resources, or affluence that their white counterparts do. Because Atlanta's interesting because while we have every rapper under the sun here and a Tyler Perry here and Tyler Perry Studios here and all of these wonderful things, right? And we have the Black mayor named Keisha and we have her predominantly Black council. We also live in a city that is the birthplace and headquarters of Coca-Cola, of Home Depot,
home
of
to
Delta
CNN.
Airlines. Yes, CNN, Cox Media, Turner Media, which is Cartoon Network and all of the things. Georgia Tech is here, just like the AUC is here. Emory University is here in the same way that the AUC is here. But just naming those alone, what's a Tyler Perry Studios to a CNN?
Right.
What is the AUC to an Emory or Georgia Tech? And so Atlanta gets packaged and sold as this chocolate Black city where all of these possibilities are a thing.
As a Wakanda, as one rapper said once.
Exactly. I was going to get to that. Right. If you ascend to this level of wealth like a TI, it can also be your Wakanda. But that's not like the reality for most of us, right? Because the most of us are at the behest of these same institutions. And so when I say a city is a site, is the literal like embodiment of what capitalism looks like. It's the unevenness of capitalism, the requirement of obscene wealth, while also the requirement for obscene destitution or like people with just nothing. at living right beside like people who are, you know, ascending the ladder rapidly, with folks who sort of just stay in the same classes generationally. And so it's this mixed bag, but at the end of the day, we have to realize that no matter where we sit on this level, whether you're the head of Coca-Cola or you're the shelterless person across the street, your position is relative to the mode of production that then makes that city as a capitalist institution, the place where all of these things come together as what we then recognize as the accumulated wealth of the city as an institution.
Mm-hmm.
And so as our mayor, who I'm absolutely not a fan of, and many other leaders constantly remind us, the things that we do are for Atlanta, right? We have to be one Atlanta. We have to be a solid Atlanta. So like trap culture has to be an Atlanta culture. It doesn't get to be just like Black folks in certain neighborhoods in Atlanta's culture. Like, you know, Coca-Cola doesn't get to be an Atlanta culture. It has to be a global export of Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
So every time you open a Coke from here until, you know, maybe South Asia somewhere, it's still, you're opening something produced and marketed in Atlanta.
Right.
And so there's this sentiment here that Atlanta is too busy to hate, which we know it's not. And there's a sentiment here that Atlanta influences everything. Our culture, our everything sort of influences the world. And all of those things are true, but we have to root all of those things, the good, the bad, and ugly about it, in the idea that it's all based on the concept of Atlanta as a global capitalist institution that requires Black death and Black destitution to exist at all.
Yeah.
And that's the part of the work of having a Black city or a Wakanda or some imagined like Black prosperity land under capitalism that most of us don't want to wrestle with.
Yeah, yeah, and we're actually going to loop back around to, you know, some of those city discussions and even into trap music. But I want to rewind into some, you know, some earlier music than trap music. So, you know, we on this podcast we always affirm, you know, the phrase classical music as being music that's foundational to a person's lived experiences. But before I, you know, ask you about, you know, what music is classic to your lived experience, I wonder what your relationship is with classical music, as it were, because, you know, the city of Atlanta is home to one of the great symphonies in the world. Is this something you've ever been engaged by or engaged with?
So I actually love the Atlanta Symphony, and they occasionally do shows in Piedmont Park, which is our largest park, which is super nice. So I've done that before. And I actually grew up a orchestra kid in high school. I was a musical theater geek.
Oh,
that was me. And so I still carry a lot of that. So I played violin, viola, and cello. Violin being my primary instrument. And then I sang in traditional school chorus and city chorus and all of the choruses for many years. I think from, I don't know, like age 8 until I graduated high school. But then also while doing those things, I was also active in my Black church choir. In high school, we started a gospel choir. When I went to college at the University of Alabama, I joined just the university's Black gospel choir. And so I guess my experience when you talk about classical sounds and like what is foundational to you, even in all of those, I guess, trainings and like formal teachings, I always had like that resistance of like Black sound and Black music, you know, pushing it. And honestly, those sounds are what drove me to play the instrument. I had never been to a traditional symphony orchestra, but I did always love Ray Charles. And I love Ray Charles for his orchestra, right?
Yeah.
And so, and Ray Charles is a native of Georgia, you know, Georgia on my mind is a direct sort of, I guess, tie between when you think about Black music and our own classical lived experience. I mean, Ray Charles will tell you he was trained in country music and Negro spirituals and the Black gospel church. But then when you gave him an orchestra, we got Georgia on my mind and all of his genius hits that are in a similar vein. So I just always think it's interesting, like when you see Black folks, whether they be sharecroppers like Ray Charles or just like a country kid from a town like Macon who just knew soul and R&B and blues and hip hop, but then given a violin, I always reread my classical teaching through those lenses. So it's always, I guess, a conflict for us.
Georgia, Georgia, the whole day through, just an old sweet song.
That's really beautiful. And you mentioned the Negro spiritual. And when it comes to American classical music, as it were, so-called classical music, I think the Negro spiritual is absolutely foundational. Every American music was born from that soil, but my challenge, at least in my own musical development, were the religious implications of the Negro spiritual. I felt like I couldn't really be connected with it because I was never particularly religious. When we expand that idea into the work of so many of the black leaders of the past, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, so many of these folks, houses and bodies of worship were sort of that home base in a similar way. Is that something that you've ever struggled with, the relationship between religion or the perceived need to connect religion to black liberation?
Yeah, absolutely. As both an organizer and as a musician, I see that, and I've definitely experienced it. And it wasn't until I got into adulthood and I got into Black queer communities in Atlanta and started expanding my notion and my thinking and my just knowledge of like spirituality versus religion itself, and started doing alternative readings and listenings and just understanding that it wasn't about like the Christianity of it all or the Islam of it all, if we're talking Malcolm X.
Yeah.
But it was more about the power of religion, resistance to religion, and those spaces within that Black folks have crafted out for ourselves. So if you go all the way back to the plantation, on the front end, it sounds like a spiritual, but you also have to understand that at the time, Black captives weren't an English-speaking people or Spanish-speaking people or French-speaking people. And oftentimes, if they got English, French, or Spanish, it was through religious teaching, right? And so if I'm laboring in the fields as a slave, and I know all of us speak the dominant language through religious doctrine, but the way that we inherently communicate is something musical.
Mm-hmm.
Why not make music coded as communication, right? And we create our own sort of just like counterintuitive to the power structure space of resistant spiritual being. And so it's super dope, like the labor that went into that it's fugitive, right? It's evading capture. It is our own way of communicating. It is on the front end read as something religious, but it's not actually religious at all. It's a spiritual connection. And it's a conversation that can't be heard or interpreted by the white gaze or by whiteness or by the master or the capturer or anything that we're trying to escape. And I think that part of it is the foundation of all American music, which is to say that Americana or American music in all of its iteration is just Black music.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think having community and just rereading and understanding my own Blackness and Blackness itself, like through these sort of revolutionary ideas, taught me that it's actually okay to find like radical blueprint in church, because it wasn't about the churchiness of it. Or was it, like how we relate in churchiness? Because no matter what you go through the week, back in the day, you knew you'd see your whole community on Sunday.
Right.
And so that will always be the place. If we're going to do something, it should happen at the church or around the church.
And it's also hard to
powerful.
separate the narrative of, the Exodus story from what those Black folks were going through. So
Absolutely.
the narratives were so powerful as well. But I like the way you framed that. It's not about the Christianity of it all, but but the spiritualness, that spiritual connection. The spirit of Blackness. And that spirit of resistance.
Right. Because it's like, I don't care if you speak one language and I speak another, right? We play two different instruments, right? But we know what rhythm is.
Yeah. Better than most, might I add.
Exactly. So we know what those are. So without speaking, I could stomp and you could clap and we could always communicate, and it is what it is. And we could say it sounds like gospel, how the
Yeah.
stomp claps come out, but we know what we really doing.
Yeah. I wonder if, in the same way that, the language was a tool. I shared with you information about some foundational orchestral works by Black composers, how they use that, European model as a tool of resistance. And this counts for, in or outside of music. Do we have a structural loophole in that same way? Many would argue that it's the vote, but I'm sure you have opinions about that.
I don't think it's the vote. I think our loophole in that, our structural loophole, is the way Blackness lives and survives despite all of the chaos. Like, our being is always in crisis. Like, you don't get the spiritual without the plantation.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that there is no jazz without the plantation, because
Right.
you needed that mixture of sounds. You needed those mixtures of culture. There are no blues without the plantation, because the blues literally is in direct resistance of the plantation.
Yeah.
And so I think, as many Black feminist scholars talk about the loophole of retreat, which is one of my favorite topics discussed in Black feminist writings, the loophole of retreat as seen in Harriet Jacobs's Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, where she escapes the plantation, and instead of going and succumbing to a forced non-consensual relationship, or to stay and be at the behest of the master's terror,
Mm-hmm.
she stays in an attic space, in a tiny attic space, with just like a peephole to the outside world, where she feels both safe but also at risk and in harm's way and in a constant state of crisis all the time. And so I think we have to find these loopholes in these pockets in ways that are both that open up an avenue for our possibility, but also are still a cage, still a place of being confined. And
Mm-hmm.
somewhere between the confinement and the escape, we have these counteractions that dismantle whatever carceral space that is trying to sort of keep us enslaved or keep us captured. And so I don't necessarily think it's voting, but I think it's the everyday way of being Black. Like, the very idea, which is why I'm obsessed with trap music and trap culture, because Black trap culture is selling dope, but is also selling plates. It's buying a 4-bedroom house and making it 12 rooms, and all of the things and the possibilities that happen there. It's all the ways that we have lived despite and survived despite, that then creates the laws and the structures to keep us in place. And that sort of poetic of built structure, resistance to structure, built structure, resistance
Mm-hmm.
to structure, that Blackness is and Blackness does, that then gives us our loopholes, that then gives us these music cultures that we all so cherish and adore and participate in.
Yeah, yeah. How about we go to the trap, since you've mentioned it? So, of course, as you've laid out, trap culture is about community, is about collaboration, about co-ness. Every co you can think of as it relates to Blackness. But of course, there's also music that comes out of this culture. How would you define trap music? What is the role of the music that comes out of trap culture?
I think trap music does so much, right? It's my bread and butter. It's everything. So I could talk about it for hours. But the key points that I try to drive home and paint for everybody is to make a way out of no way. To be placed in these communities, to inherit all of these generations of trauma and pain and destitution, to live in these very, very violent communities that are in constant state of crisis, where the only remedy to the crisis that you're being offered is just more crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's some sort of carceral institution, whether it be the school or the actual prison, or the low wage, no dead end jobs.
Mm-hmm.
It literally, you put people in place And as Ruthie Gilmore talks about, it's the crisis of the surpluses that happens with capitalism. Capitalism always produces too much. And then what happens if capitalism produces too many slaves, too many laborers, too many neighborhoods, too many things for it to care for, right? What happens? And so trap cultures that feed into the music come from communities who were denied, usually an economy. So where there's not an economy, we innovate and we do our own thing. And so I look at trap and what makes trap music what it is as this sound and this lyrical content that is both speaking of a place that is 100% illegible as being a community or a place. Because to privileged eyes and ears and to non-Black eyes and ears, the horrors of the trap
the horrors
like,
of the trap.
my God, like y'all live this, and it's to people who live there like, yeah, we live this. And to say that it's wrong, right? Because the world works in this right, wrong, survive, punish, good, bad sort of binary, right? That's inherently violent. You've been told your whole life that every way you know to be either is invalid or just doesn't exist. But there's this music, this whole, I say 4 generations of trap into trap now as a musical canon or whatever. And I just think like each generation shows us the power of Black trap work in producing both that sound, which is a combination of sounds that is things that are thrown away. I mean, foundationally to the trap is the 808, right? And it's like, that's a thrown away instrument. That's a thrown away sound. That's something that had to go be picked up. And in the same way you go get pure drugs and chop them up and stomp on them and mix them with everything but the kitchen sink, and you bag it up and you market it and you sell it. Like when crack was invented, nobody knew that crack was a drug. Like it was possible for that to be a thing. And then it got into the hoods by all of, the bigger governmental things. And it was packaged into a product that was then necessary for somebody in the community to survive off of and somebody else to capitalize off of. And even though that's inherently violent, the folks who profited off of it also used that money to stimulate an entire sub-economy in a community that was denied it otherwise.
Right.
And so to do the work of wrestling with trap music and the culture that comes with it, you have to let go of this idea of what's good and what's bad, what's necessary and what's not, or what's capable of making music. A lot of the first trap artists, like when you go back and you read the way that people have written about or perceived them, they're typically not taken seriously, and they don't take themselves seriously as rappers. You catch a lot of trap rappers saying, but I'm not a rapper. I'm from the streets, or I'm this, I'm that. And it's like, what does it mean to be a rapper, to be an artist, right? And to say I'm everything else, but I also kind of do this art, because we know the art will always be a front because they trap. So it's every other activity that they participate in, every other dream that they've had that they don't have access to. They know, if I can meet the right person, find a heartbeat, get on it, maybe get somebody to shake a little ass to it at the strip club, or pop off in the streets, then I now have a new access or a new avenue to success that was otherwise denied to me. And so I think those are the things that you have to listen for and listen to when you listen to the music, whether it's the lyrics, the beat, who's on it, their relationship. I'm enamored by artists' relationships. Like the way that Gucci Mane spent most of his career in and out of prison, but every time he was locked up, he did the work of bringing along another artist to not just be his placeholder, but to keep pushing the culture. There'd be no Future or no Young Thug without Gucci going to jail. But while he was gone, he took care and ensured that they would continue to work. And then from them, we get Gunna and Lil Baby and all of these other artists that are taking the world by storm because they were mentored and brought up in this same trap family, the same community. And so there's so many things that become possible when we look at the ways that Black folks throughout history have always trapped, and that the way that those trap activities inspired the music.
Traptivities, if you will.
Yes, Traptivities.
Well, what would you say is the sort of archetypal example of trap music? What is the Beethoven 5 of trap music?
Okay, wow. That is,
or maybe even just a starting point for someone who's never, experienced the so-called dangers of the trap.
So, I mean, obviously, I tell everybody to go back to T.I.'s trap music album, where
an Atlanta
even
native.
Though, absolutely, and everybody that I'm going to name on this trap list are from Atlanta, as we talk about the foundational text of trap, right? Because it originated here. Mm-hmm. Yes, dirty South hip hop is dirty South hip hop, and that Memphis and Miami and Houston and Atlanta and the Carolinas don't generate the exact same sound, or Memphis, like we don't generate the exact same sound, but it's similar. And then the trap cultures that come from that are also very different. But Atlanta's the origin of trap. T.I. put out the trap music album, stamped it as such, and we get to name a thing. So I tell people to start there, because T.I. absolutely tells you what he's talking about there. Like he lets you know that, like, I've been doing this forever. I've always been doing trap, and now trap has a name.
Hey, let's get away and get a room on the other side of town. Hey, shorty, I was feeling for you.
Hey, what you thinking to me? Hey, come on.
Hey, let's get a room. Shorty, we can freak some if you're down.
What you would do?
Hey, daddy, I was feeling for you.
Well, hey, bet they be like, I know we tired of the nightlife. He want a wife, he just looking for the right type. Yeah,
so I put that one there. Obviously, Jeezy's Trap or Die mixtape, and then the Thug Motivation 101, 102, 103, and the Recession. Those albums, like Jeezy's first 4 or 5 albums, are absolutely necessary. D4L and Shawty Lo, I'm a huge fan of Shawty Lo. Any of their music are good starting points. And then obviously you get into the East Atlanta side of things. So Gucci, the Trap God, the Trap Legend, all of his mixtapes, the Wilt Chamberlain series, the No Pad, No Pencil documentary, anything by Gucci is definitely necessary to have there. And then, of course, the artists that Gucci then bursts, right? So your Pee Wee Longway,
right,
Young Thug, Future, 21 Savage, Migos come out. And I think Migos are important because Migos are made possible because all these other artists had to get some level of legitimacy for Migos to then come out, make Bad and Boujee be an international success. And then Migos give us the album Culture, which every time I listen to Culture, I'm just like, they literally took every variation of Atlanta trap sound, whether it be the auto-tune, sing-songy, or just like your hard, like Sunny Digital, like back in the day, DJ Toot sort of hard trap sounds. They took all those sounds and put them in an album and called it Culture. And I love the genius of just calling it Culture, because they literally took what Andre 3000 said at the Source Awards and was like, the South got something to say. That was the same move in saying, like, trap has something to say.
Right.
Because we, the trappers, the trap sound, Atlanta, our Traptivities, we are the culture, period. Here it is. And here's a sampler. If you of all the sounds that you've
a
taken.
sampler, yes.
And informed by all of these artists that I just named, if I were to package it into some sort of perfect, near perfect final form to then spark the next sort of wave of the music, it ends with the Migos in that sort of culture moment.
Hey! Raindrops, drop top, smoking, no cooking, the hot pot, fucking on your bitch, yeah, that, cooking up dope in the crock pot. We came from nothing to something, nigga. Hey. I don't try nobody, grip the trick, nobody. Call up the gang and they come and get gang. Cry me a river, give you a tissue. My bitch is bad and Boujee, bad. Cooking up dope with a Uzi. My niggas is savage, ruthless. We got 30s and 100 rounds too. My bitch is bad and Boujee, bad. Cooking up dope with a Uzi. My niggas is savage.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible. Traptivities. I think I might even name this opus of the podcast Traptivities. I love that word.
I think I'm into it.
Yeah. So, you're, I think you mentioned this before we turned the mics on. You're on your way from Atlanta here to Minnesota to continue your urban studies. Before I ask you what you're looking forward to experiencing and getting involved with here outside of, school and all that sort of thing, did you expect for a place like Minneapolis to be where stuff popped off the way it did back in May? I mean, I don't want to say that things started here, but from my perspective, after the murder of George Floyd, that's when we saw shit going down in Philadelphia and Los Angeles and Atlanta. It kind of seemed like Minnesota would be this place that's way off in the distance, full of white folks that don't care, but it actually, kicked off right here.
Yeah, it definitely shocked me, but not in a way that says it's impossible in a Minneapolis, but in a way that it was just like the way that my life was aligned in the moment. Like I decided to go to Minnesota in late February, early March, literally right before the pandemic happened. So that was really interesting. But when George Floyd happened, I think multiple things happened at once. And I think people everywhere were so upset and outraged with the pandemic, right? That we were just waiting on that spark. And I hate that it had to be in Minneapolis, but I'm happy that it did. Because oftentimes when things like that happen in cities where we know it to be a thing, it doesn't even have to be a deep South thing either. Because like a lot of times, you look at civil rights history or just like histories of anti-Blackness, period. People think violences like that are normal in places like the Deep South or in the colony, right? If you look at it like global anti-Blackness, like, oh yeah, like you can totally see that happening in the colony or maybe in pockets of the metropole, but not in certain places, right? And so when it does happen in a place like Minneapolis, where we don't hear a lot about the place specific anti-Blackness that happens there, or like most recently with Jacob Blake,
right?
In Kenosha, Wisconsin,
not too far
right?
from here.
Yeah. So it's like, are we gonna forget the Great Migration happened? Are we gonna forget that anti-Blackness is global? And are we gonna forget that the way that these cities are actually built, governed, and all of the things, right, are based on anti-Blackness being the basis of the law, being the basis of the map, and therefore being the basis of how policing exists and works. And so when it happens in a place that's not an LA or a New York or a Chicago or a deep South city, it forces us to say that this is probably a national culture of violence.
Right.
This is probably a global culture of violence. That George Floyd happens anywhere in the world at any time because the uprisings prove that, because past cases prove that, because the cases that have happened since George Floyd, my God, it's September basically.
Right.
And how many other bodies have dropped since George Floyd? All over the map.
All of the ones we'll never know about.
Right. The ones that we don't see or that get swept under the rug, or that like Rayshard Brooks comes out, not Rayshard Brooks, Ahmaud Arbery, excuse me.
Yeah.
That comes out a month or so later because we are living in a pandemic. And while we're on our phones all the time, even things like that go missing. And so it did a lot to show us. We've been joking and saying shit's getting weird. It's really weird.
Yeah.
But the weirdness, like the global weirdness of it all, is just the anti-Blackness of it all.
Yeah.
That is so loudly anti-Black right now. And I think it happening in Minneapolis shone that light on things.
Yeah, and that I'm glad you frame it, as you use that word violence and really frame it as a global issue, because what I always go to, what I mourn most is the murder of Elijah McClain, a black kid who literally played violin for kittens. You know, that's what he literally did. And that was not enough to absolve him from the dangers and the violence of being black, you know. So, you know, I think it's really important to, you know, again, not to, as you've laid out, not to scapegoat the Deep South or the big coastal cities, because it's a national issue and furthermore, you know, a global issue. You know, when the dust settles, if the dust settles, you know, when we're done wearing all of the scarves that we liberated from Saks Fifth Avenue and these other places, what does it look like? What does that society look like to you? And will music survive that revolution? Will there be music on the other side?
We absolutely have to have music, right? There's no struggle without music, because music comes from the struggle. You know, I mean, going all the way back to the spiritual and the Black church and the gospel, and then, you know, Black blues and soul artists having the genius to say, I could take that gospel song and make it the mess around and really, you know,
Right.
do what it do. Or in the same way that hip hop artists said, I could take that disco song and give you a whole new genre. Or I could take that, you know, Caribbean beat, that Caribbean sound,
Yeah.
and make that into a hip hop sound that then later gives us a trap sound that then gives us all of the things that we're playing with now. I feel like music in this moment across genres is just I really don't hear much new, but I hear a lot of good perfection of, or just amazing, like flushing out the possibilities of old genre.
I see.
And our revolutions are the same thing. What we did using revolutionary mutual aid rapid response during COVID-19 is nothing new. Like, we've always participated in mutual aid. And honestly, if you're non-white in this world, your cultural existence is mutual aid, you
Right.
know? And so to look at the way music right now, both popular music and marginal music, are the land of the sample, like
Yeah.
the very obvious sample.
Yeah.
Like, our revolution is like the suite of the best samples, because what else would you get from a revolution led by young people who came of age under the internet and like having somewhat unlimited access to information and connectivity, right?
Right.
You know, I mean, we're having this conversation thousands of miles apart from each other, and we're doing this for entertainment purposes, but we could absolutely be doing the same thing for revolutionary purposes. And what you're going to bring to the table from your background or from your classical trainings, and what I'm going to bring from mine, are going to give you a beat, a sound, and a revolution that we've heard before, but not like that. And the not like that is the part that's going to get us free, because the not like that is that possibility. And so I don't know what that world looks like, but I know that there's a whole lot possible when we let go of all our chains and cages and just sort of get together and just get in the lab and create, and let drive, just like in the same way we make music and what feels right, what moves us, or what sounds right. Because, you know, like, a right sound is a right sound. Like, I hate, like, I'm usually, there's no rights or wrongs, but like in music it's different because it's that tender.
It's a feeling.
And it's the same thing.
It's a
right,
vibe,
it's a
as
feeling.
the kids say.
It's a vibe. Yes. And it's the same with revolution. Like, we could try communism as done by China or by Cuba, or we could try socialism as done by the Russians. Or we could take the streets like Paris, or we could burn the plantations like Haiti, but it's not going to look the same.
Wow. Yeah, that's something heavy to think about. You know, when folks, you know, ask me that question, well, what do you want, or what is the end goal, or what does it look like? You know, I always don't have those exact answers, but I know this ain't it. I know this is not going to work.
Exactly. It's no different than taking over the aux cord. Like, if I'm in the car
Yes.
and there's elevator music, and I know we got to be in this car for 2 days, it ain't gonna work. I gotta find something else. And it's nothing wrong with jumping through playlist after playlist until we find what works. And I feel like we have a group of people in this world that are willing to throw down and do the experimentation, And we're being sat down and sidelined by folks that are too scared to just switch it up. Like, just just play something else. Like, even you're sick of it. We know you're sick of it.
Yeah.
And it gets frustrating in the work, but that's also a part of the struggle. It is like, how do I make something feel so right for so many that what used to be the marginal way of being, in the same way that trap was a marginal sound. It's so funny. I read an article about a French trap artist, and it was like written in 2012, and they described him, and he does that weird like auto-tuney sound too. And it's like, fast forward how many years later, and that weird auto-tuney sound is the standard.
Right.
So
right.
It takes a minute, and it takes experimentation. But just like I tell, I love trap for so many reasons, but one of my favorite analogies in trap is like being in that mixtape phase where you just feet in the streets. And all that matters is like that the streets rock with you. I feel like as revolutionaries, like we've gotten to that place where as long as the streets rock with us, like when it drops, when it really hits, it comes out swinging. And so I think we're still in the mixtape phase. And I think it's fine because there's a lot of individual activists out there that are co-opting the movement, like your Sean Kings and your DeRays of the world. And
they call Sean King the white DeRay,
Child, they call Sean King a lot of things. They call him a lot of things, but an organizer is not one of them.
Oh.
And I look at it and I'm like, those are the artists that get pushed out because something new is necessary. Yeah. Those are the ones that get pushed out because what's new is necessary.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to having you here in Minnesota to help us rock these streets. How can folks learn more about you, catch up and keep up with the work you're doing on the urban study side and on the community organizational side of things? Yeah, so pretty much all of my work I put on social media. I'm building new avenues for myself at the moment, so we'll see what that looks like. But for now, mainly on Instagram and Twitter at Colonize Local. Is my Twitter name for very intentional reasons. Mm-hmm. And I do In the Middle, which is our YouTube pop culture roundtable sort of critical analysis of all the things with Deshaun Harrison and Justin James. Yeah, shout out to them. Reeds. Yeah. So we do that work. And that's pretty much where you can find me and catch more. And I'm hoping to drop more soon, especially as school starts. And I have the time and space to write and sort of produce more things. Yeah. As I said, maybe again, before we turn on the microphones, the first time I heard you use the phrase destroy the world, it was a little scary. The longer I thought about that, the more I saw it and see it as something necessary. We have to destroy the world as we know it and create something that works for not some of us, but all of us. So I really applaud you in everything you're doing. And thanks so much for joining me in this conversation today. Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I got control on my true collective ball. Famous, so famous, number one desirable. It was really moving for me to listen to T talk about people who are really trying to push and people who are really trying to change and people who are resisting that, I have some drama sort of like that in my life right now. T was not talking about that at all, but it's something how that is the general way things are moving across so many fields, them versus us. There's always the thing of, oh, why can't we just come together? Because there are certain people that don't want us to. There are certain people that don't believe in the progress that's needed for that so-called coming together, and it's something for me to hear. It affirms me to understand that, as you said last week, everybody's feeling a certain kind of way. It's affirming to me to understand that there are a lot of people really facing adversity and really coming to terms that all of this work is not, like, as we always say, it's not imaginary. There are actual people, actual structures that we're fighting against.
Refresh my memory. How did you meet them?
So I met T through the one of the YouTube shows that I watched that they mentioned in the middle. It's I think it's great. It's very black centric. It's very unapologetic. But my good friend Justin is one of the co-hosts there, and some of the things T was saying about the implications of a city and talking about what revolution could be just were really attractive to me. And then finding out that they have an instrumental background, I thought it might be cool to bring them in and see what sort of topics we could explore. So yeah, I hope that was a conversation that y'all could appreciate. Well, I guess it's TRILLOQUY time, huh?
Oh, look at that.
It's gonna rain on your head.
Garrett, I came across a news story that was sort of shocking at first, and then all of a sudden I thought, well, maybe not. And then I started to read again, and I went right back into shocked. So you know that basically California as a state is on fire, right? Or much of it is, and anytime they have a lightning storm come through, they're chasing the next batch of them. Okay, so did you know that inmates fight fires in California? Prison inmates fight fires in California. For $3 a day, you can go and... Now, I'm wondering, knock time off, man. Knock time off the sentence. If you're
knock time off, set them free.
Well, this is...
Say, if you go and risk your life putting these fires out, you are free. Hell.
Now, but they have a problem this year. You know why?
Why?
Because COVID has been running rampant through the prisons. So now those teams, those squads of firefighting inmates are now knocked down with COVID.
So you put them in a cage. You told them they were probably out there shackled fighting the fire.
I don't know about that. The coronavirus has swept through correctional facilities and infected many vulnerable California inmates, leaving fewer available to help contain more than 24 major fires and over 300 small ones. They make between $2 and $5 a day, $1 extra per hour when fighting a fire.
So what are your words for the person who okayed this?
I want to know if these are in the for-profit system. Because you know that there was a push to get more for-profit prisons going. Right. Because you can see where the people who have a stake in that would make money by having contracts with, would that be a city level or a state level with contracting firefighting brigades? I don't know how that would work, but somebody's making money is what it comes down to,
Somebody
right?
is lining their pockets.
Somebody is like, okay, we're talking Shawshank Redemption level lining your pockets, right? So, number one, I don't think it's right to have inmates fighting fires. Do you?
No, of course not. I'm frustrated by...
And is this an option? Like, is this like saying, hey, you can earn $3 to $5 a day if you come fight fires?
$3 to $5 a day, and they're risking their lives. Come on, it's not like they're sewing buttons on dresses. They are putting out fires out here,
making a license plate.
Right. Come on, and even then, we have to.
I was shocked.
I am an abolitionist. I think we need to open the jails, but let's save that conversation because we're running long here. But if that is something that had to be necessary, because I understand the fires are out of control out there, that means you need to be setting them free. That means they need to be fully exonerated out here risking their lives. But even then, it's the sort of transactional relationship there. You go risk your life, you risk dying, and we'll let you go live your it's layers upon layers of problems. I guess we'll keep an eye on that and see what happens. So
I didn't mean to sidetrack you by bringing that up. I'm sorry.
No, that's that. People need to understand that sort of thing is going on. That and there are think about the innocent people that, the people who did not commit these crimes, victims of the prison industrial complex who are just in jail because that's where the system led them. And now they're out here, putting out a fire for y'all, so y'all's mansions and whatever neighborhoods don't burn up. It's gross. It's disgusting. Look, my little two things. So, the first thing I wanted to mention, and I thought about whether or not to bring this up, how I could deliver this. I sit on the board for an orchestra. I was offered a little side position to consult with programming. I decided to turn it down because I saw the big thing is that I saw Handel's Messiah on for Christmas. Okay. Throughout the rest of it, I saw that the big piece, the so-called showstopper for every concert, was something from the canon with, other things sort of sprinkled in, because
window dressing.
We're thinking about the DEI and all that. And even if that's not what they intended, I just wanted to say to all of the predominantly white organizations, the white run organizations, as we laid out last week, we're tired. Many of us are very tired. Scott, you've laid out this all black season challenge. If an orchestra is trying to work with me at this point, that's what I'm going to have to see, because there are so many grassroots organizations out here, really trying to get started and create something that's going to be equitable and focused on folks from marginalized communities. It's not right for me. I don't feel like it's right for me to spend more of my time dealing with organizations who are just going to include and not transform. That's a conversation I had with somebody trying to get some work out of me earlier today. Is your organization willing to transform? They said yes, the folks I was on the phone with earlier today. So we'll see where that goes. So I just wanted to, mention that. I'm still sitting on the board. I'm happy to serve in that way. But, we were earlier in this opus, we were talking about, Joe Budden and him turning down all this money and stuff. I think it's important that we really prioritize, the magic and the resource of experience and perspective, and make sure that we're spending it equitably. We want other people to do equitable work. I feel like I have to spend my time equitably. So, I wanted to make sure I named that. The big thing, the big, true and real, whatever, that I wanted to address this week. So I was taken off the air at our job. The long and short of it was I included programming. I changed things up in a way that is not systematic, in a way that is not according to the rules, as a basic way of saying it. The levels of change, I've really been pushing for, don't happen as quickly as I like. So sometimes I just, more times than not, I just do, what I like. So until I'm able to, have a conversation with management, I've been taken off the air. I'm still, earning my paycheck. But Scott, I wanted to bring this up because we talk about troublemakers. We lost, John Lewis, not too long ago, everyone using the phrase good trouble. People always citing, they sat at those lunch counters. She didn't get off the didn't get off the bus, or didn't give up her seat. We talk about all these people who we revere for breaking rules, but we ourselves refuse to break rules. Okay. I don't feel like I did something wrong just because I did something against the rules. I feel like I am falling in line with what I feel like my purpose is. I understand that, you may not feel totally comfortable jumping in, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to respond. If there's anything you think about this.
I think that people should know that you and I have, for the entire 2+ years that you've been here, we have kept our interactions with management pretty private, so I have to say that not knowing all of the things that led up to where we are now, all I can do is comment on what I see, and there are some things that you bring up that I 100% agree with. And there are stances that the company takes that I can see, that I also understand. Excuse me. I am not intentionally trying to talk out of both sides of my mouth whenever you and I cover these sorts of things. But that is, in fact, the very awkward position that I find myself in, being honest.
So as we tape this, this is the night before my
I was going to ask you when your meeting was.
Yeah, my conversation with management. So next week I will fill y'all in. What I encourage everyone to do, think about especially the black folks out there, think about the value you have with your perspective, with your expertise, with the way you were able to form something and build something out of nothing. You know, how T was talking about with the trap, how you were able to pick yourself up from, almost nothing, or wherever you come from, wherever that falls on the scale, and land in this predominantly white space in which you are charged to make change. Is that something that you're going to do with permission, or is that something that you're going to do? Do you have the courage